Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. It's Friday night, and it's time for some Runestrike. There's a new patch that just crossed the horizon, and as you can probably see on screen, we also have some events coming up. So there's some excitement on multiple fronts. So we're going to jump right into it. The goal here tonight, just to plot out the agenda a little bit, is we're going to talk about the cards from the new season. Probably going to build some decks and we're going to run some games. There's some excitement and there's some exciting things that are happening as a result, both of the recent patch as well as these cards. And as we've learned in the past, there are some thoughts. There are some things going on, and not everybody's on the same page. But we'll get to that. First thing is I do want to shout out, there is a news item, as you can see. I'm going to point this way. I don't know if I'm pointing the right way. And me stirring the pot, well, that's kind of axiomatic at this stage, Doc, don't you think? One might think. So, there's a new tournament coming up. You can check out the details in the official Discord, but it's cool that there is a news item here. So by the time this goes up, it'll probably already have registration closed, but for the benefit of anybody who's in the live stream, which by the way, if you're seeing this on YouTube, you can definitely see just below me all of the contacts. So if you want to check out the live stream, you can head over to RTChompGG over on Twitch, or check out the website too. Just throwing that out there, rtchompgg.com. One of the cards from this new season, I had the opportunity to spoil, which was really cool. But I pointed the wrong way. Yeah, I tend to do that because the webcam is flipped in order to make certain things work. So I always forget. Whatever. We'll live. It's funnier this way, right? We'll claim I did it on purpose. Oops, I said that out loud. All right, so here are our 10 new cards. And there's actually some really cool stuff among this. So, I was asked to do this. Sending a quick note real quick. Got to set up some other stuff. Apologize. I thought I had this was already cleared to go, but a couple things struggling at the moment. So, put a sticky note on the monitor that says point at this. I mean, I could, but then I'd have to do that. I kind of just don't want to. I just don't care. This is the weirdest looking game of Vampire Survivors I've ever seen. Did I not update the stream? Oh, no. You're right. You're right. I didn't update the details. Thank you, Atona. We'll fix that now. It does matter for when I'm checking stats afterwards, like making sure that I have everything in the appropriate categories. Hey, Noah, what's good? What even is this build? It is a new build, which, funnily enough, either tomorrow or Sunday, they're releasing a new Vampire Survivors build. We may be playing that later. Just spoiler alert. Anyway, really interested in hearing your takes on these. All right, well, we're going to go in order. We'll go in order. So these are, as always, hot takes. I obviously have not acquired these yet. I haven't had the opportunity to play with any of these. One of them is my spoiler card, but beyond that, I'm kind of going in clean slate, and we're just going to see how things go. Now, the other caveat is that we just had two monstrously large, both in quantity of changes as well as scope of impact, patches that just hit the game pretty recently. So as a result, there's still a lot of things in flux. There's still people figuring things out. It's going to take some time for both those changes to level out as well as these new cards coming in. So it's a very exciting time if you are a brewer, if you want to try and build new stuff. I think this dragon isn't it. Seems mediocre. Well, let's talk about it. So it's the Arctic Stalker, which does look pretty sweet. I mean, this thing is, I mentioned this before, but I love the scope of the art in Runestrike. The dragons, you can see details of like what they're hunting in a lot of the artwork, and in this case, it's woolly mammoths, I guess, or at the very least, some kind of mammoth. So obviously Enormous Dragon. Makes sense. So it's a 5 cost 4/6 with lethal and consume. Gain +2 health. If this consumed a beast, gain +4 instead. Now I'm going to go out on a limb and say that unless you specifically want consume in your deck, you're playing this in beasts. Now, we've been trying a number of beast decks, and you'd be surprised playing beast tribal how few beasts you ultimately want or need, because there is obviously a lot of synergy, but the problem is that a lot of them aren't spectacular, at least right now. Clearly the number of them will grow. So if we assume best case that you find a beast deck that has room for this, it comes out as a 4/10 lethal. That's pretty sizable. Your opponent's never going to want to block it for obvious reasons. But the problem is you typically don't block anything anyway. Now, one thing I will give to this is you could play this in Emrys, and it's a 4-drop with 10 health. That is almost assuredly, or 5-drop rather, it is almost assuredly going to survive to the next turn. Meaning that you start your turn with, say, a 6+ health, assuming a Sickle Stalker ran into it or something, minion on the board. Which can be a very big deal when you're talking snowballing things out of control. To be honest, I probably would have liked this better if it had dangerous instead of lethal. In Emrys, it could be a 4-drop. How is Emrys reducing the cost, Doc? Also, 5 costs, it's hard to... Yeah, I was going to point that out. At 5 costs, it dodges consume, or combust, rather. It dodges annihilate. I was having a brain fart on what the other end of it. So it hits that sweet spot, which is nice. That's where I was thinking about this card with all its blood abilities. Exactly. With Elder, that's fair. That's fair, Doc. I forgot about Elder. I don't run it in Emrys myself now. Maybe it should be. Again, a spoiler for maybe later in the stream. We're going to be talking about Emrys. But I could see this possibly as a home in Emrys. You could reasonably run Beast Emrys. You know, like that doesn't sound horrendous. Whether you're going to have a turn 1, 2, 3, or 4 beast outside of Island Turtle, which maybe Island Turtle is enough because, again, big butt, it's pretty thick, it's going to probably live. And most opponents are probably not going to invest a combust in, say, an Island Turtle. If you're playing the version I am and you're running Raptor, you're probably not going to want to consume it, but, you know, maybe you will. But there are a number of other beasts that you could potentially include. I could see this having, like, fringe play. Maybe you run this as a one-of just to help fill out different slots, but I imagine you're going to have a hard time including this. That being said, Consume is a relatively rare ability. It's a dragon outside of Chaos. Those are notable if you want to do certain things. Dragons may come up again later. But, I don't know. I'm not super sold on Arctic Stalker. But we're going to move on and talk about this. Actually, this might be a pretty good Gigantify target. To be fair, a lot of things are good Gigantify targets. Just about anything becomes a good Gigantify target. Granted, this one might be better than normal. I'll give you that. But I don't know that this is necessarily like heads and shoulders above. But, you know, we'll see. Next one up is Empusa. 7, 8. I don't think that's how the lethal works, Atona. I don't think you get extra damage out of lethal when you trample. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think you get it. So this one's a weird one, and I was talking to people offline about this. So it's a 2-cost 1/1 that must consume a friendly minion when played. It's weird to me that it says friendly. Like, it specifies that it has to be friendly, because inherently consume says it must be played on top of an existing friendly minion. But redundancy aside, it must consume a friendly minion when played, and the recover is add a copy of Empusa to your opponent's hand, then destroy it. And the keep is you lose 3 health. I haven't been able to figure out it's true or not. Not a lot of times play like that when I did. Oh, you're talking about the lethal thing. Yeah, so this is interesting. It's obviously a very weird card, and it kind of feels as though it's the sleeper of this set, this season. The reason I say that is You disrupt your opponent on multiple fronts with this. One, 3 damage is not something you just ignore. We've seen the power with Torment, so your opponent clearly is encouraged to play this. It comes down earlier than Torment, although you may just end up eating some of the damage yourself because the board may not favor what you want, giving up your board position. It also, because of the way the hand restrictions work in Runestrike, it can mess with your opponent's hand on another front, therefore further encouraging them to play it. But why do you care? They're just going to give it back to you. Well, the main things are, one, you have to consume something. So your opponent who is not prepared to necessarily consume their stuff, maybe they'll have minions to play, but maybe it's, if they're a slower control deck and they're slamming big minions, the last thing they want to do is have to eat their big minion that they just spent a whole turn investing in. So they are not necessarily going to be ready to deal with this. Is there any way to copy it and then bounce theirs? There's obviously bounce. So you'd be pushed into Darlock for that. The problem is, I don't know if there's any way to copy it. You can low-key, but I don't think there's any way to copy your opponents. With Grisly Voidcaller, it would be a 4 cost. Oh yeah, well, funny story, we'll get to that in a little while. So now there are more ways to copy it. We'll call that out real quick. I think Darlock is a way to get extra copies. Yeah, I think you'd have to. The issue is, Empusa can always consume Empusa, so making more Empusas doesn't matter that much. True. That is also true, Atona, but getting extra copies and forcing them to jump through hoops, if they have to bypass their turn, if you're able to, and we may be able to do this with Grisly Voidcaller when we get to that later, but if you're able to dump multiples of these in your opponent's hand, hey, again, when we talked about it with the patch for Mana Rot, forcing these things into your opponent's hand, and maybe Mana Rot's another thing to pair with this, getting them into your opponent's hand and then just locking them there or screwing up their draw or just taking away their turn. Like, time walks are pretty good if you can play them and you don't have to jump through too many hoops, given the format. So this feels like there is something there. You want to have multiple Empusas on board for maximum Empusing, but then you want not on your opponent's board. Yes, it's weird to make that happen. It's obviously possible. But I don't know if it's going to be too many hoops to jump through to make this happen. Notably, it's also a legendary. So if you build your whole deck around this concept, we've talked about this before, but you only have the 1 copy. Granted, it's not a 10 cost, so you could potentially play this or do whatever you're doing and the other stuff to help it in the same turn, as compared to, Odin, where it's, okay, or Jupiter, it takes up your whole turn before you can start doing stuff. Yeah, it's relatively simple to remove, but at the same time, it's a recover, so, and there aren't a lot of ways to actually damage your own stuff. So it's really going to be a matter of, do you run Corpse Demon in the same deck as this? Because if it's on the board, your opponent plays it, then kills the Corpse Demon, blows their own thing up. So your opponent will have to jump through some hoops in order to actually deal with this thing before the recover goes off. Actually, hold up. If you have 5 Empusas on the board, you're only dealing 20 a turn. Well, you're not dealing any damage if they're on the board. They have to be in their hand. Which, again, if they have multiple Empusas, they're going to have to consume the existing Empusas. It's just going to be a time walk. Your opponent's not going to sit with like 8 of these in their hand. That's not going to happen. Unless they somehow have 8 in their hand and then can't draw a minion, or they don't have any minions in play and they can't draw one to do it. Right, but you put them in your hand by having them on the board? Yes, I see where you're going with it. I'm clarifying it mostly for the sake of anybody who's watching this later. It'll hurt you if you keep the potato. Yeah, it's a game of hot potato. I think there's something here, but I don't think you build a whole deck around this. I'm sure a lot of people are immediately going to jump on, we'll play this in ZCon, and A1 them a bunch and do that. It is something that adds it to their hands, so I can definitely see why people would go to that. I don't know that that is where it wants to be. I think it's worth experimenting with, but this to me has to be a cog in the machine. It can't be the entire goal. I mean, 20 damage a turn. Well, it's not 20 damage a turn. It would be 20 damage once, most likely. I have a hard time imagining how you'd even get 5 of them. But assuming you did, and for everybody who's confused, it's obviously the 3, you get 5 of them, and then you're hitting for another 4 with your hero, your champion. I think there's something here. It definitely feels like a Johnny card to make something happen. It's take 3 damage or kill one of your dudes. Exactly. It's going to shine against certain builds, and other ones it's probably going to be trash. It definitely deserves its legendary slot to me because it is such a complex card. This is not something you'd want showing up. I mean, there isn't limited in this game, but you wouldn't want it showing up that often. So bottom line is I think this is, like this, we'll see this. Obviously, we're going to see it for the near future as people try it out, but we'll see. I lost to it earlier today because I forgot I could play it and then transform it to stop the game. Fair. If you forget what your cards do, that could be problematic. All right. So after that, we have Enraged Villager. It's a 2/2 for 1, but this gains +1/+1 for each other friendly Enraged Villager in play. Have we seen any cards like this that if you lose the ability, do they die? So let's say you have 2 of these in play, or some number of these in play. They get +X/+X. Then somebody deals 2 damage to Enraged Villager number 1. I know we haven't gotten through all the text yet. Somebody deals 2 damage to Enraged Villager number 1. Then they wipe out the other one somehow. Will Enraged Villager number 1 die? Have we even seen that sort of effect yet? I don't think there's a way to wipe, you know, like there's no purge effects. There's no silence effects or that sort of thing in this game. So I don't know how that behaves. It lives, if I recall correctly. I don't know that we've ever had this scenario before, so it'll be interesting to see. But let's get to the rest of the cards. So it gets +1/+1 for each other Enraged Villager in play. And Imbue 2, summon another Enraged Villager to a friendly slot. So it's a 3-cost 4/4. Or 3-cost 6/6, excuse me. Because this is Imbue mana, which, as you can see here, Imbue with the new mechanic is when played from hand, you may pay the specified cost to trigger another ability. Now, you could, of course, a 2/2 for 1 seems on stat, and 2 3/3s for 3 seems on stat. Yeah. But remember, it's, like I said, it's really a 6/6 for 3. I mean, yes, 2 3/3s, I'm just describing it differently because I think that is more valuable. It always seems to have stats, but it's not doing anything special. Yeah, it is a warrior, which means that it doesn't really have a very relevant tribe. You know, if this was a soldier, it might be way better, but second minion can be played on the other side of the board too, so there's no adjacency dependence either. That's actually notable. That's actually notable because I didn't realize that from looking at some of the other previews before, I kind of mentally inserted the idea that it would require adjacent, but when I saw it play, they got a 2/2 and a 3/3. What? It acted like a war cry. That's weird. Is that intended? I mean, it literally does not say war cry, so that seems odd. If it is a war cry effect, so then you get a 2/2 and a 3/3 for 3. I mean, that's still probably playable. You know, we talked about it before with the buff to Prince of Rags and the buff to Whispering Imp and all the other aggro buffs that I think the bare minimum for a 1-drop is a 2/2. Now, this is a 2/2 with an upside. It's a little weird if you just play this raw on 1, because then you're whiffing the Imbue. I think if you're an aggro deck, you probably still do that. I think whiffing on turn 1 or 2 is really bad for aggro right now. Despite what people are saying about how ungodly powerful aggro is at the moment, I think that there's actually there's a lot of room to attack aggro, as weird as that may seem. There's a lot of ways that you can beat up aggro, and I think that if you don't get the imbue off on this, and you just have to play it as a 2/2, or rather, if you try and wait for the imbue, instead of ignoring it and just playing it raw, you'll end up falling behind, at least in my opinion. It's in a more aggressive realm, or one of the previously aggressive realms in Chaos. I definitely think this is going to get played. Found another card to pair Grisly Voidcaller with instead of Empusa. Are you talking about filling your entire board with Enraged Villagers? or do you have something else, Beard? I mean, pairing this with Voidcallering this? No, Jacko, yeah. There's a lot of things. When we get to Grisly Voidcaller, there's a lot of things to say. But it would also be cute, incidentally, to fill your board with Enraged Villagers, but I don't know how exciting that's going to be. Yeah, this being a Warcry sort of thing doesn't make sense, because I'm pretty sure Hyperia's A3, which has a similar effect, obviously it's not looking for specific minions, it's just looking for other minions, but I'm pretty sure that literally says Warcry on it, so that's odd. Well, it's only friendly Enraged Villagers. You might have seen a bug. Yeah, this is only friendly Enraged Villagers, so it won't buff your opponents. But I do like this card. I think this card is valuable. I think that this will probably find a home. Oddly enough, Chaos, which was the previously, considered one of the more aggressive realms, really is kind of thin at the 1-drop slot. So this is very much a welcome addition. All right, so next one up is Guardian the Brood. Now, this was my actual preview card. So if you want to see my written thoughts on it, you can head over to rtchompgg.com. It should still be pinned up there by the time this goes live on YouTube. I really like this card. I think this is a value engine. It obviously is. The rally is kind of whatever, but the rally can matter if it starts going off multiple times. Why is that? Well, I pointed this out in the preview article, so I'm kind of cutting my own legs out from under me, but blocking in Runestrike is bad, right? Blocking in Runestrike is bad. However, this allows you to block, quote-unquote, for free. Yes, you have to invest mana, but it's not a real card that you're investing. So you can chump block and then win a race, or at least set up a board to race and then just continually throw the Drake Hatchlings as fodder in front of things. Do you really want to do that? Of course not. But it does allow you to do other things. It's a 6-drop that is a must-kill, but if you kill it, you get another big card they have to deal with. Yes, that's the thing. You can't leave it on the board because it's a 7/7. That's a big body. You can't leave it on the board because they're going to keep accruing value. But if you kill it, they're basically going to get an on-curve Broodmother, which is an enormous threat in and of itself, and a card that a number of people have complained about on its own. Now, granted, it doesn't go right into play. They have to play it, but okay. This card is really good. Inside a Dragon Shell or outside of a Dragon Shell, I don't think that matters. I think if there are later game focused Chaos decks, which there are, they're going to want to consider running this. And worst case, it says draw Broodmother for 6. And most likely, if you play this in an empty lane, how many cards is your opponent playing that's going to kill this and they didn't take their entire turn? If they annihilate this, which would be arguably the most efficient way to address it. Okay, they're playing a 2-drop. If they went first, if they went second, they have 1 spare mana, so they're not doing anything. Now, that could be problematic if you're facing down aggro. They have a board, you play Guardian the Brood, they annihilate it and then continue pressuring. Yes, you just lost a ton of tempo. But in a control mirror, this is exactly what you want. This card is super powerful. I have a hard time believing that this is not going to make an appearance somewhere. So, next up is Stygian Impressor. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell me what flesh or soul are. which I'm going to check Discord real quick. And chat, if you already know. Okay, here they are. I have the text at least. So Flesh, it's a 2/3 for 3, and then you choose Flesh or Soul. So think Feast or Famine. Flesh is draw the lowest mana cost minion from your deck and give it undead. Soul is draw the lowest minion in your void, give it undead. Now that's somebody's random text. That is not a screenshot, so chat, correct me if that is not the case. Trying to see if I can find maybe the patch notes if it called it out. I don't think it did. It's a little unfortunate that it doesn't show it in client. But so Time Walk, Draw, Broodmother. Yes. Yeah, it seems pretty good. Seems okay. But for this, I like both of these. I like that there's more void interaction. I think that's important. I think that there's a lot of different ways to leverage that. I think it actually provides something useful. And one thing that's not here is that they're not showing the cost in this person's text. So this one's a little weird to evaluate since we don't have the whole text. I just put a screenshot in Discord, but it got buried. How long ago did you do that, DT? Because I'm actually looking at your message where the from the text. So I'm trying to see. I'll stall for a little bit and see if I can search you in Discord, which I don't think I can because I'm streaming, so it doesn't let me search properly. This has come up before. I don't know why Discord does that. I mean, this is a card that generates cards that could draw more cards, so we're kind of in Island Turtle for Island Turtle. It's free real estate territory. It's a 2/3 for 3 that fixes your draw, and in the late game gives you 2 plays that turn, probably. Yeah, I think this is definitely valuable. I just don't know. The tempo loss from just playing the body could be really bad. And that's part of the problem. The tempo loss from playing the body could be really bad. If you're playing against aggro, this just may not come online quickly enough. I'm still skimming Discord as I'm talking about it, but I think that being able to, I mean, a tutor, even, it's not a true tutor because you don't get to look through and choose. But realistically, if you know your deck well enough, you're getting off of Flesh, the lowest minion in your deck. You know what it's getting every time, or at least have a good approximation of what it's getting. So you could either set things up intentionally as your deck building so that maybe Stygian Impressor is the lowest cost thing. If you run 2 of them, okay, you run 2. And then everything else is stratified, so you only have singleton, so that you can go fetch for certain things. It impacts deck building. Now, drawing the lowest cost minion from your void is a little bit different, obviously. You can set up scenarios where the lowest cost minion may still be 10, depending on what you do. Stygian for bird, draw a card, seems like a bad play, but also a cute play, fair. If Empusa is your lowest cost card, gets you Empusa. Yeah, exactly, yeah, that's true. Then Empusa eats the Impressor, yep. Definitely doable. Or Snake Oil Peddler, true. But you can definitely make a toolbox-based deck or start to build a toolbox-based deck via Stygian Impressor. That's why I'm struggling to find the screenshot, and it's just not showing up in Discord. But regardless, I think that there's value in this. It'll obviously fluctuate based on the costs of Flesh or Soul. But I think that there's definitely things that will be done with this. It's just going to be a matter of whether that tempo loss is sustainable. Because it's a multi-step process. Play this thing, do the Flesh or Soul, then play your body. It requires a lot. Now, notably, if it gives them undead, clearly this helps flesh out undead-based builds so that you can reach for other things. But that means that initially your undead stuff is not going to be as good, you know. Or not as consistent. Maybe not as good is not the right way to put it. Then you have an Empusa in the Void. It's a destroy effect or copy an opponent's hand is not yours. Oh, you're saying if that already happened. Yeah, I see what you're talking about, Doc. Yeah, this, I would not be surprised to learn, is in the Empusa deck in order to ensure that you have multiple copies of this effectively. So, I think Stygian Impressor is going to find a home. So after that is Snake Oil Peddler. So this is a 1/1 for 1 with Warcry. Target minion gains +3/+3 and recover. This loses -2/-2. Now, weird grammar aside, which always comes up, this guy's interesting because it's realistically a spell on a stick. You don't care about the body. Now, it is a rogue, so for all you rogue enthusiasts out there, it's another one to add to your tribal list, potentially. It is a 1 cost, so the aforementioned Stygian Impressor could hypothetically go tutor it out. You know, and you can pretty much rest assured that you're going to get your Snake Oil Peddler unless it's, you know, in hand, I guess. As to the value of this, I'm not really sure. So it's obviously a combat trick. You could ensure, like, +3/+3 is a significant amount. In order to get that, you basically have to spend 3 mana. The reason I say that is in Gigantify, it costs 4, but you also get Trample. So I'm valuing Trample at roughly 1 mana. So here it's 1 mana to get all of the buff stats, and I've seen this sort of effect in other games. All these cards seem fair. Like, that's the thing, is this seems fair. I don't know that I would run it. Like, I wouldn't fault somebody for running it, and from now on, you constantly have to have in the back of your head, well, okay, well, I'm only surviving this block by 3, sort of thing. What if they Snake Oil Peddler it? Sort of thing, and oh, they blow me out because then my whatever dies, and now they get through, and blah, blah, blah. Attack again effects obviously would get the most value out of this, so we're not restoring Ogma A3, but it is now give something +1, attack again, and then you Snake Oil Peddle it, now it has +4 attack, crush through something. Speed minions obviously like it. It takes 2 turns for it to decrease. Like, I think this is worth it. Peddler's perfect for Darlock A3. An Impressor brings him to hand. I guess. Yeah, you can A3 their guy, buff it, and then, you know, get another attack out of it. I don't know that I'm finding room in a Darlock deck for this, though. Because without that play, I don't know how many other things you want to hit. Now, given the Impressor, yes, you could just run it as a 1-of and say, hey, this is a matchup I want Snake Oil Peddler. I'm going to use the Impressor to go get it. And otherwise, I'll just sit on it, you know, and I don't have to do anything. Notably, it could target itself if you have to, I guess. I don't know why you would, but also kind of works with Morlich. Yes, that's also valuable. It turns into a 1-cost, deal 4 to their board. We've talked about that before in Morlich. There's a lot of ways to abuse a temporary buff. We'll have to see where this ultimately finds a home. We'll have to see where this finds a home, but I think this will find a home, just like the others. So far, we're, to be honest, other than Arctic Stalker, and even that could possibly find a home, a lot of these, I think, are going to see play in one way, shape, or form. So after Snake Oil Peddler, we have Standard Bearer, which is one that people have latched onto almost immediately, I think. So Standard Bearer is a 2/3 for 4 with a Warcry. Summon a cavalry to a random adjacent slot. So coin flip. And then the Imbue is 2 blood. Summon a cavalry to the other adjacent slot. So basically, when you summon this, you will have this in 2 cavalry. Hey, Sportive, what's good? Like, I have a hard time. No one's playing this unless you absolutely have to without imbuing it, right? Now, paying blood for this is tough, but I mean, it's very, that's the whole point, is that you're getting this other resource to use. How am I doing? I'm doing all right, Sportive. We're just running through the stuff for the season. So, if this comes out on curve, you get a 3-4, you get a 4-11, essentially split across 3 bodies. You don't really care about this. You know, the 2-3 body here is mostly irrelevant, but getting multiple cavalries in something like Hyperia seems pretty strong. She doesn't seem that good. I think I'm 100% playing this in Hyperia. I think I'm 100% playing it in like regular soldier decks. Like if I'm playing Magus Soldiers, I think I'm playing this because it presents a wide set of threats and there's flexibility in whether, like, you don't have to use the blood ability, even though I was just saying I have a hard time seeing someone not doing it. Oh, Empusa. Sorry, I missed that other comment, Sportive. We did talk about her. She's weird, and I expect there's going to be a deck with it. Doc was saying he already saw some interesting stuff going around on ladder, but as far as Standard Bearer goes, I like this. I think that this is going to find homes. I could see it end up being like a one-of. Standard Bearer seems good with Buffy Boys. Yeah, exactly. That's why I think this really... I mean, it's a build-a-board card, and Hyperia wants you to build a board for her A2 anyway. Now, granted, you'll need 5 blood now because you need to do stuff. But late in the game, you could go Standard Bearer, any other dork, and then, assuming you've had the blood accrued, just make an enormous cavalry right now. Like, you are threatening an enormous cavalry, like, every single turn. It's 3 soldiers for the 1-drop, carries the buff super well, it's a good card. Yeah, I like this a lot. I could see it maybe being only a one-of, just because, you know, strain on your blood as a resource, but that's going to depend on the deck. I put in my Soldier Magus deck. The issue I have had with this card is not having enough spots, though. Yeah, that's why I'm thinking maybe it's a one-of, but it could, you know, I ran Commander. I've seen other people run Commander or other board fills. This doesn't fill the entire board, but it comes at a much earlier point in the curve. So, and especially in Magus where you're going to be drawing a bunch of cards. Now, granted, in order to pay for the Imbue, you'll have to take a turn off, but you could absolutely sneak this in with other stuff and just Magus constantly has gas. I really like Standard Bearer. I expect it's going to show up. I want to add that card in my Magus Soldier deck. I think it's worth considering, at least. Like, I think it's worth trying, and then if it ends up not making the cut, it doesn't make the cut. But right now, I think it's valuable. The amount of stats you get for the mana cost feel like it's above curve. I'd have to, like, really think about it, given that the blood cost makes it weird, but, you know. Okay, so Illuminate. I honestly don't like this card at all. I really don't like this card, and I don't think it should exist. Where the party at? Right here, Luminar. It may not be what most people think of when they say party, right? What's going on? What's good? So in all seriousness, I kind of hate this card. Like, to the point that I wish it wasn't printed. This card makes Chosen One worse. Why? Illuminate is a sideboard card in a game without sideboards? No, Illuminate is a combo piece in a game that has consistently had, or a combo facilitator in a game that is, as of late, consistently had issues with combo decks. Make you play it for the draw, or maybe you play it for the draw. That's the reason you play this. It's one of the oh, I see what you're saying, Doc. Yeah, it does weaken it on that front, but it's a cantrip, and that's the thing. I don't think... Now, don't get me wrong. This card is horrendous without the cantrip. I don't think it's very good with the cantrip. I don't think stealth is... Yes, we've seen Nightshades. We've seen these other things show up that have had issues with where they have stealth, and then people have challenges dealing with them. Absolutely. You know, people were just complaining about the Zcon deck not too long ago. But I don't know that it's so rampant. Maybe this is a seed card, and mid-next season we're going to get a whole bunch of stealth stuff. I don't know. We already did the rogues, so I'm not sure where that would come from, but doesn't mean they can't make more rogues, right? I don't think stealth is that much of an issue right now. Maybe this is a safety valve going forward. But the problem is that it's a one-cost draw card, and the only place I see this showing up, because we don't have sideboards, as Atona was pointing out, is in a combo deck. It's a 1-cost cantrip. Something's going to reduce it to 0, and now we have to make it cost 0? Yeah. Now to choose one, you can get that card 4 times. You could. But even then, it's replacing itself. It just kind of sucks that you have to pay to replace it. It would have been fun Evangelist combo. Exactly, Doc. That's the problem, is I think that I don't like this card for a number of reasons. If there needs to... Let's assume, like, good faith. Let's assume that we needed a stealth safety valve. Okay. Make a card that beats up stealth, but not like this. Not like this. I don't like this card at all. I kind of wish it didn't exist, because I expect in a couple months, maybe a few months, we're going to see a lot of this card. But not in the way you think it's going to be. And that's the problem. So, that's my thought on Illuminate. All right, next up is Umbral Vise. All right, so we'll get into this. It's also a punishment for crowding, try and use a Desperate Charge or it might. I've seen people have wildly different takes on this card, which is fun to watch, discussion when it's revealed. Yeah, so Umbral Vise. That's our next one. Target enemy minion gains Anchor and loses 3 health, and Imbue repeat on adjacent minions. So Anchor is interesting. I'm not real clear on why that needed to be here. We don't really have... I mean, you can Dimensional Rift your own stuff, but I don't know how often that's really going to come up. It just doesn't seem like a very relevant thing most of the time. So that part is kind of whatever. Again, maybe it's a future-proofing thing. But the 3 health is decent for a 3 cost. Obviously, this is almost... It's a conal board clear against aggro. Maybe not necessarily a board clear. We were just talking about Cavalry not too long ago. Hired Steel has gotten a buff, so you're seeing more of that. There are a number of 4 health minions, so those immediately come to mind as compared to the ones that would get offed by this immediately. But in conjunction with, well, I mean, a blood ability is going to make it steep because you got to pay blood to do this, but it is relevant because at 3, this could hypothetically very easily stem the tide against aggro. Most of the things, as pointed out by chat, I think Doc was saying it, that, yeah, Doc was saying it, Desperate Charge, Aura of Might, encourage you to cluster your minions. There's not much penalty for keeping them together. There are some other cards that care, but for the most part, you don't really get punished for positioning in that way. Here, this is an active punishment to do it, and we've talked about that on stream before, where because there weren't reasons to do it, yeah, just group all your guys up and Desperate Charge them, group all your guys up and Aura of Might, and who cares? But now your opponent's getting more value out of this. Now, in the latter case, with the Aura of Might, you may not be able to do a whole lot with Umbral Vise, because presumably it's landing on things with enormous butts. They probably activated blood abilities immediately, blah, blah, blah. Things may be out of range, but maybe they blocked, and now that block was not appropriate despite having the Aura of Might. In the case of Desperate Charge, obviously you can hit a number of different things with this and just off them, because Desperate Charge is coming out of a lot of different decks, including aggro decks with low to the ground minions that aren't very sturdy. So I like this card a lot. I expect we'll be seeing this, especially in the near future, since everybody thinks it's now the aggro-apocalypse. But I expect Umbral Vise is going to be showing up in better numbers. It's going to be probably a meta choice, because obviously if you're running into a ton of Emrys decks or other Dirtle decks or just control decks in general, it doesn't have nearly as much value, other than it does get through Protect. Now, a lot of the things that are going to get protected, such as your Nemean Lions or even various priests, have bigger butts than this will deal with. But it is notable that it's lose health, so it will go through Protect. All right, we saved one of the more complex ones for last. And that's Grisly Voidcaller. So Grisly Voidcaller is a 2-cost 2/2 with a Warcry, add 3 copies of target minion to your Void. Does not copy Grisly Voidcaller. And Imbue for 1 blood, draw 1 of those copies. So this card seems kind of bonkers. We don't have a ton of ways to reanimate things. You know, in the past, you've seen Mortal Exchange. We now have access to Stygian Impressor, which the Voidcaller may or may not be able to set up. You may or may not be able to set this up for utilization with the Impressor, just based on what you're taking. But odds are you're doing it specifically for that purpose. As we talked about earlier, for Empusa, you can definitely do this a ton of times and generate lots of copies. It necessitates finding the Empusa first, but, you know, you got to do what you got to do. This card is annoying when it follows your 8, 9, or 10 drop, because now your opponent gets to play that next turn. Yes, but it assumes that, and here's the thing, it's super cheap. Like a 2/2 for 2 is obviously understated. Comparatively, you could have a higher steal. But it's a 2/2 for 2 that, air quotes, draws a card. I mean, it literally says draw a card, but it's not from your deck. It's a card of your choice. It's almost a tutor. This card feels insane. I feel like it's a 2 of in every shadow deck, no matter what the deck is. To be honest, like, at what point are you against aggro decks? You can target your own stuff. Against control decks, you target their stuff. This card feels insane. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. No, you could totally do this on an enemy minion from Voidcaller. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I can't wait to get this one. I agree, Sportive. Like, this seems really, really good. Drop the board clear, dude. They go, I'll take copy that to play next turn. Yeah, if they set, you copy it, set back. Inferno Dragon. Whatever. It doesn't matter. You just take it. And the thing is because it's so cheap, you can play this alongside a removal card. It's like, oh, they play set. All right, well, I'm playing Zcon. I'll annihilate that. Well, I'll copy it and then annihilate it. Don't annihilate it and then try and copy it. That won't really work for you. But if you're playing Darlock, all right, copy it, Dimensional Rift. There's no penalty for this. Adding extra things to your Void is a little weird, but again, with Darlock, you could then go draw them. It's unlikely that you're going to be able to do this early enough in the game with something relevant that you're going to Darlock back those copies and be ahead, but that is a scenario that could happen. You know, you play this on turn 4 or 5 against some other mid-rangey thing, you copy their stuff, immediately draw it with Darlock, now you have 2 of them, and then you might draw another one. You get the Void draw damage, but that's it. Yeah. I mean, it matters. It does matter. But at the same time, this seems like a super powerful effect. It's definitely going to change a lot of games. Like, all the people that were losing their minds over Conjure, I imagine are going to go absolutely ballistic over this card. Like, absolutely ballistic. Now, granted, your opponent has more control over this. So now that this is a thing, when you play against Shadow, it's not just simply, well, I can't play attack again minions because they're going to corrupt it. And if I play my Bull, it's going to eat my board and time walk me. Or they force mutiny, or they whatever. Now you can't play your big dummies. You can't play, well, not that you can't play them, but there's a risk in playing them. You can't necessarily just run something out there and not be prepared, because the Shadow deck is maybe not always, but potentially always +1 big dude over you, or +2 big dudes over you, because they'll have 2 Voidcallers and they can just go get them. I'm kind of ignoring the end of the game scenario where you draw the other copies, because, to be honest, I think I've only gone to Void damage and actually had turns happen, like, once. Like, that just doesn't happen. But this is also something to keep in mind as we go forward and we get more Void support. We've been talking about it for a while, where there's a lot of cards that care about the Void, but not actually a lot. There really just aren't that many quantity-wise. And as we get more, things like this start to have even more power packed into them. Your big dummies become their big dummies. On pull Jacko out of the Void, now you have 3, or turn 5, play Jacko, draw a second Jacko, pull Jacko out of the Void, now I have 3 Jacko. Yeah, I mean, Beard was saying that earlier about Jacko. That's where the spoiler alert came in. I think it was Beard. I'm scrolling up real quick. But Charon, yes. Like, Charon could become relevant for this, I guess. It's a little tough. It's a little tough to make Charon behave. And I like Charon, but it ultimately depends on what you get. Turn 6 for Krampus. Yeah, the fact that you can pair this with your own play and every... Like, think of any good minion that now said, give me a 2/2 body and draw an extra copy of myself. Like, that's good, right? Granted, it costs 2 more mana, but you don't have to do it that turn. You could split it out. You could do it that turn because it's cheap. I don't know. This thing seems bonkers. With Charon, you don't take the void damage. That's true. I'm not too concerned about the void damage, though. It also puts more copies in the grave for the card at the end. Yeah. Because we didn't talk about this yet. We do have one more card. But I actually almost forgot about it. But yeah. Voidcaller. This one, double thumbs up for me. This is real strong. I really like this thing. Also, mirror turn 3 Jacko. Opponent uses it to get his first copy and then A1s it. This is just... I don't know. I love that the Imbue is potentially a blood cost. Obviously, we have the Imbue on Enraged Villager as mana. I like seeing other ways to utilize blood so it isn't just the blood abilities. We've talked on many occasions before about how the blood abilities drive Runestrike. They are the game, for the most part. So the fact that now there is a decision point, or more of a decision point of, do I need to bank blood or can I afford to do this? Really, let's be honest, that decision is going to happen in the deck building stage. You don't really care. I mean, there will be times that you adjust on the fly. That will happen tactically within a game. But I expect most decks, so say you're playing Dawn. One of the things when I talk to people offline about playing Dawn, and this could go insert other build, a Brienne A3 build, whatever. The biggest thing to me when you map out your blood ability usage is how many times do you expect to use that blood ability and in what matchups. So then that should be floating around in the back of your head of, okay, I'm playing against a control deck. I don't even need to do any of these things earlier in the game. I'm going to wait. And then I'll Voidcaller their thing and then just go nuts. So that you're always, I mean, it's only 1 blood, so realistically, you're going to be able to use it a lot. I could definitely see this card getting the Imbue increased and the cost increased. The body is irrelevant. It matters. Like, if this was a good body, too, it would be absolutely bonkers, even more so than it is. But I could absolutely see this getting played at, like, Imbue 2 and cost 3, possibly even more. I don't know. This just seems really good. Grisly Voidcaller warrants the blood use. I hope they make more cards that make you want to spend your blood over your champion's abilities. Absolutely, Beard. Absolutely. I'm 100% with you there. But like I said, I expect that they being whoever's playing this, you have a rough idea of how many times you're going to use certain abilities at certain points in the game, and then go from there. You can get Empusa off a Nightmare. Is it really a demon? It is a demon. Lol. I didn't call that out earlier. That's kind of funny. We did talk about the tags for some of the other ones, but we didn't actually talk about that for Empusa. I mean, realistically, how many demons are there? The odds of it happening are pretty slim, and I don't know that it's necessarily one that you would just pick up randomly. You know, if you're not based around an Empusa deck, I don't know that you're picking Empusa off a Nightmare, but, you know. All right, so, last card. Void Golem. It's a 5-cost 1/1, already off to a great start. Banish all runes from your Void. Then this gains attack and health equal to the number of your runes banished this game. So it's an epic, so you could have multiple copies, but I imagine you're only doing this once a game. It's also a construct, since we were talking about tribes. I don't think anything cares about the construct tribe. But this is a weird one. I don't know. Obviously, late in the game, this could be absolutely enormous, right? It could be absolutely enormous, and then it just one-shots your opponent because it's like a 25-25 or bigger. I'm looking forward to the game to have this as a big game finisher in Sakara, at least her A1, until her A1 gets nerfed. Yeah, you could end up running this and then just giving it blitz and just going, all right, well, you're dead. Oops, you're dead. I don't know how well that's going to work. I honestly have no idea what this could reasonably... Now, to be honest, in Sakara, maybe you run a one of with this, and then if it's a 10-10 for 5 with Blitz, that's probably good enough. Like, you don't need it to be a 24-24 and you've gone through your whole deck and you're going into void damage. Like, that's not necessary. I think it's above 10 in my case. It probably is. This enhances the utility of Voidcaller. Yes and no. To be honest, I don't know that I care about you. Yes, it can be used with Voidcaller, but I think where this is going to show up a lot is in Sakara. Yesterday I played against the AI and they played 17-17 Void Golem. I still won. It can still get tagged with a lot of removal, notably not the Chaos ones. But they're, you know, imagine you're playing against Darlock and you slam your Void Golem and they go A3. It's like, well, that's kind of bad. Darlock uses Golem, then Voidcaller, Impressor, A2. He's got all 3 copies in hand. Oh, you're saying to set up the Impressor. That's a better use, DT. That's a better use. I like that. I thought you were originally saying it, like, use the Voidcaller in order to, like, just buff this thing, which doesn't seem worth it. Dimensional Rift, that bad boy? Yeah, there's a lot of things that can still... Well, maybe not a lot of things, but there are ways to address an enormous Void Golem. That's why I think that... I mean, it's just a big dummy, right? Its synergy with the Impressor in order to ensure that you find the specific things is relevant. And maybe there's more ways... Like, how many ways do we have to fish things out of... I guess it's really just the Impressor, because... And then Darlock A2. What I was thinking is, how do we set up the same sort of scenario with other cards? But what would you have to... What do we do for... is there any way to set up the Impressor plus Voidcaller scenario sort of thing to try and get all of the stuff off Impressor? But I feel like you have to jump through a lot of other hoops otherwise. Like, Mortal Exchange doesn't quite do it, because how are you going to get... I mean, I guess you do this, you Voidcaller, you Mortal Exchange. You can't do all that in one turn. But you could do that to get whatever their biggest thing is right into play and then play another one, I guess. Giving it Blitz, so I expect the simplest path here is going to be just play this in Sakara. Call it a day. I don't know that speed really addresses the issue. I mean, it does to some extent, because if they try and chump block it, they'll just clobber through it. I guess in Laura, you could move it, but again, it's if you have a turn, like you play a big dumb Golem, and you get a turn, I assume your deck is going to have some way to clear a path, and then you just go, you're dead. But the issue is getting that turn. That's why I think Sakara protecting is the biggest thing. Also, the second one would be just as big. It's number this game. Oh, you're right. So the second one will just get bigger. In my head, even though I read it out loud, in my head, a lot of these effects in other games, it's one of the drawbacks of playing a lot of games. It's like, sometimes you just mentally insert text or interpret text differently. I was expecting, like, remove through this effect sort of thing. Yeah, so... Sakara seems like the likely home for this. Because if you play this on turn 10, I imagine it's probably at least an 8-8. Maybe not an 8-8, but this thing is probably going to get pretty large. Or have the potential to be large enough that if you blitz it in an open lane, your opponent's in deep, deep doo-doo. Now, granted that it's just a big dummy, the question is, at what level does this outpace, say, something like Kraken? Because it's kind of competing for the same slot. So Kraken can function as both a big dummy as well as one that eats blockers because of its attack again, or, you know, insert other alternative. So the question is it worth doing this in lieu of a Kraken, in lieu of some other big thing? I'm not sure. is more than a 5/5 for... Yeah, but a 5/5 for 5 is not good. Recover gets stealth. That might be a little extreme. It would also be a hell of a lot of text. Be a lot of text. We're gonna need, like... It's gonna have to fold out like old wallets. You know, like that was the meme. Does anybody remember that anymore? Do people even do that anymore? Because everybody has pictures on their phone. But like, you'd pull out your wallet and then it would cascade with pictures and IDs and stuff. I don't think people do that anymore. Womp womp. Anyway, so yeah, I honestly was not super hyped about this, but the more we talk about this, I like this better. Text becomes scroll over for manual. Yes. There was a game that it was a physical game that in order, I forget what it was, and chat might be able to correct me on this or help me out with this, where the rules text on the card, you literally had to go online for it. Now, naturally, the game is dead and the site is dead, but it was like the rule text would get updated and changed. So it'd be funny if this was like, click the link and then here's the latest text. And by funny, I mean, that would be awful. Please don't do that. But I like this thing more and more the more I think about it. So it's unfortunate that we can't get them all in one picture, but overall thoughts on this patch or this season update, because the patch is kind of a little different. The season update, the season pack, I really like it. I really like it. It actually introduces a number of things that impact the game on a variety of different fronts. It's not simply more bodies or more spells or more whatever. It changes the way that you interact with base level components of the games. Imbue gives you just a new way to expend your blood, or mana for that matter, in ways that we didn't have before, thereby providing new plays. I think there's a number of powerful cards in this particular season pack that add a huge amount of variety, either to builds as you're building the deck, or new ways to think tactically within the game because your build is so different, or because your opponent may be presenting different threats. It goes all the way down to positioning, because now we get more things that care about where your opponent plays as well as where you play. Overall, like I said, I really enjoy this. I think I'm looking forward to this, and I'm really excited to start playing some games and unlocking these cards. But that's going to do it for this time. So as always, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and Black Lives Matter.